Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Space Engineers Survival Tutorial Series, Destination Mars. This is episode 6, and so we have landed on the Earth-like planet, and our goal is to reach the orbit of Mars. Once we have done that, you should have all the information you need and all the skills you need to build pretty much whatever you want. Some interesting contraptions and other devices using the mechanics of Space Engineers. So in our previous episode, we finally completed the survival platform. We have a basic assembler, a basic refinery, cargo container to hold our loot, O2H2 generator to keep our suit full of hydrogen so we can fly with our jetpack, a survival kit just in case we die, we have a place to respawn, and finally got a battery on there to store all that power that our wind turbines are generating when we're not using it. So what is our next step? Well, our next step is to get some transportation. Okay, so we want to move around on planet using something besides just our jetpack. There's a couple different options when it comes to having transportation. One, we can build some wheeled rovers, like a miniature Humvee or something like that. Our other option is we can build some airships and fly around in that way. Now, as you probably noticed, when we were flying around with our jetpack, collecting some of those unknown signals that have dropped in on us every once in a while, we're in some pretty rough mountainous terrain here. So we're probably not going to have the best choice utilizing a ground vehicle with wheels. So our best bet is going to be to build something that we can fly in. So we're going to end up building an airship. Now, I did work on this off camera and came up with a design. Not pretty, but it gets the job done. Okay, and so I can be that kind of designer where I'm function over form. I'm working on the form part. Okay, but this will get the job done. It'll get us airborne and get us moving. And I also, in addition to designing it, I also went ahead and cooked up some of the resources as well, so that, again, you don't have to watch me run back and forth, hand mining a bunch of stone, waiting for it to get refined, and then waiting for it to put the materials together to build our little airship. Now, another thing we're going to have to build is we need a way to connect our ship to the base. This serves two purposes. One, probably the most critical of the two, is getting that airship some juice. Okay, this is going to be a battery-powered contraption, so we're going to need a way to recharge it when those batteries start to get depleted. And the way we do that is we connect it to our platform here, and we let those wind turbines do their thing and charge up our batteries. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and queue up is we need a connector for the base. So I'm going to find the connector in here, verify that I've got the large grid selected, and add that to the build planner. I'll come over here. Middle mouse button to grab anything I might already have on hand, and then shift middle mouse button to start the production process. So checking the inventory, nope, didn't have anything handy. So while I'm waiting for that thing to spawn up, and sorry if I cough during this, I have a very dry throat right now for some reason. But while we're waiting for that thing to manufacture our parts, we're going to come over here and we're going to grind off the thrusters. Good. Once we get started, we really don't need our survival pod anymore. Now, it is conceivably possible to modify that survival pod into a vehicle. However, I chose to just grab and create a new design. So we're going to start slowly taking this apart as we wait for stuff to process. I may even finish taking it apart off camera as well. We'll see what happens though. I suppose watching me grind this down is a little better than watching me do absolutely nothing while we're waiting for stuff to process. Also kill some time and go get that unknown signal as well. Maybe we'll do that, depending. I'm going to finish grinding these off on each side of the cargo, on each side of our survival pod. And there we go. Alright, so let's head back here. Still rolling along. Let's see, where are we at in production? Almost done. Computers and steel plates don't take too long, so I'm just going to jump down here. Go back to inventory and hit production. Kind of chill and wait. There we are. We are done. So now I'm going to head and grab those components. Go out to the third toolbar, hit my connector, which is number 5. I'm going to rotate it so the 2 lights are vertical. You don't have to. That's just kind of a personal preference for some reason. There's that. Then I got a new welder at one point, and I haven't replaced it on this toolbar yet, so I'll go ahead and do that as well. And now, weld up our connector. All right. Okay, so there we go. We have a nice new connector that will be able to plug our ship into our base. Now we need a ship. So I'm going to begin by grabbing these steel plates, and I'm going to just go over here a little ways away, and I'm going to make a little platform to build the ship on. So there's that. A 3x4 platform for the size of little ship we're going to build isn't too bad. This will just give me good spacing to get around it. And then get a couple of slope blocks here so I can make my way up. Okay, so to begin construction on our ship, we're going to first off need a landing gear. Now the landing gear is maybe not going to be used for exactly what you might think. It's not going to be part of our ship. It's just going to basically serve as an anchor to anchor the construction onto our platform here until our little ship is ready to fly on its own. Another thing I'm going to bring up, our first major component of our ship is going to be the cockpit. Alright, so first off, bring up our landing gear. Now this starts out as large grid, which is definitely overkill. We just need a small grid, so if I hit number 4 again, that will give me the small grid version. Pick it up until my box is green and drop it. So now this landing gear, even though it's not completed, it is locked down to my platform here. I don't have to weld it up at all. As I mentioned, it's not going to be an actual part of our ship. And so we are now good to go. We have our landing gear. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a couple of blocks, use my jetpack here, build a couple of blocks on top of the landing gear. Basically what that's going to accomplish is just going to give us a starting point, a little bit of a place to set our initial part, our cockpit, and it elevates it a little bit so we can actually walk underneath our construction as well, which is handy. So scrolling back to where our cockpit's at in toolbar 4, if we bring that up, this is the original cockpit, at least as far as I know, that came with Space Engineers. Okay, it's a fairly basic cockpit. It has a small conveyor port on the front, 2 on the back, and a large one on the bottom. Okay, now as time has progressed, they have introduced other types of cockpits into the game. We have the flush cockpit. That's a fairly recent one. Again, the ones you have access to and available will vary depending on whether you have just the base game or you've pulled some of the DLC downloads for the game as well. And then there is the fighter cockpit, the industrial cockpit, and finally the cab cockpit. Okay, so all of them are functionally the same. They do require, each cockpit does require different amounts of resources, and they have different numbers and locations of ports. So for example, this cab cockpit has 2 on the back, but they're on the very bottom of the cockpit, 2 on the front, and a big one on the bottom. Compared to the one we're going to use, 1 on the front, 2 on the back, except they're midway up the cockpit, and the big one on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to elevate a little bit, get that on top, rotate it to face us, and hit the button and drop back down. So, get my welder out. I'm going to quick left click to put any components on it that I already have in my inventory. Then I will right click and back to the connection point. So I'm just going to throw those in there. Middle mouse to get whatever I can, and shift middle mouse to get them into production. So I've got some time to burn again while we wait on our assembler. good a time as any to go ahead and replenish the suit's energy. And there we go. So how is production going here? So right now I'm on the survival kit because I accessed it directly there. But if we go to the basic, if we click here, we can get to our basic assembler. And it looks like the assembler has finished its job. So I click on that, all components are withdrawn. And our cockpit is now welded up. So now we have a start for our little airship. Now we can't actually get in the cockpit. Not a whole lot we can do at this point. But one thing we can do, if we hit the K button on your keyboard, this gives a list of all the different blocks that are present on your ship or your grid, except for the basic armor block. So notice we have a landing gear, which is incomplete. Again, that's okay. It's not going to be part of our ship. And then we have our cockpit. Now, when you're making mobile ships, a really good thing to do is to supply some specific names to these different parts. Because once you work your way up, you have a big base with 8 or 10 different ships docked to it, both rovers and airships. If you go into this control panel menu, then you're going to see them all. They'll all be there, and I'll show you. I can show you what that looks like later on. But if you have 8 ships with 8 different cockpits, if you don't have them labeled, you may have a fun time trying to find which cockpit you're looking for. So it's always a good idea as you build these things to pop in the cockpit at least every once in a while and label things appropriately. Okay, so we've got our cockpit, the first basic part. What do we need next? Well, we want to use this potentially as a mining vessel to help us mine, so we don't have to run back and forth with our hand drill all the time to mine resources. So to do that, if we want that, we're going to need some cargo capacity. So I'm going to jumble back to my third toolbar, which is where I set up some cargo and conveyors ports. And I'm going to bring up the cargo containers. So this is a small grid cargo container. Small grid ships like we're building right now have 4 different types that are available. You have the small cargo container, medium, large, and then finally, one of the newer ones, you have the modular cargo container. This one, again, depending on the DLCs you have available, you may or may not have this. But don't worry, we're not using that one. We're going to go with the medium cargo container. Okay, the medium cargo container has 4 access points. It has 2 small access ports on 2 sides, and then it has a pair of large access ports on a couple of the other sides. And the way we're going to want to orient this on our ship is we want that large opening to point towards the back, because we're going to attach a connector to that, which is going to be what we use to attach to the base. And for a connector, we need a large access port. Now the problem with this is, if we look on this side, it also has a large access port, which doesn't line up with the 2 small access ports that we have on our cargo not our cargo container, but our cockpit. So we need an adapter. So if we look again, looking down in the toolbar, if I bring up number 4, where I have some different conveyor options, if I pop that open and I begin to scroll through it, eventually I'm going to reach the conveyor converter, and this is exactly what I need right now, because notice on this side it has 1 large access port. On this side it has 3 small access ports, 2 of which line up perfect with the ports on the back of our cockpit. So those are the next two things that we're going to look at constructing. So go here to the G menu, type in conveyor. So there we are, conveyor converter. Say that 10 times fast. And then bring up our cargo. Grab our small cargo container with a plus sign, then over here find our medium container, verify that it's small grid, and it only can be small grid. Add that to the planner as well. Alright, head back over here, click to get what we can, shift to start what it needed. So what do we have so far? Nothing that will allow us to place anything yet. So let's go ahead and monitor the production process. Yeah, these won't take too long. So we head on back over here to our survival pod. We do a little bit more dismantling. This also gets us a few steel plates to do some stuff with as well. And one more row. Now, with the disassembly of that survival pod, all components were thrown. With the disassembly of that survival pod, I did wait for a while. I left it intact for the most part, but you can use those components and pieces as you go along, so you don't have to mine quite as much. So that's another method that you can use to work with this. So first off, get our conveyor converter on there. So see if we get it oriented. There we go. Everything's lining up, and then get our medium cargo container on there. So there's the next two components on. We'll go ahead and get them welded up. Alright, there we go. So now we have our medium cargo container on there that's going to help us with holding stuff. And the next thing, the last component to kind of the core of our ship is going to be the connector to get us onto the base. Now, one thing I am going to add onto this, if we bring up that 4 again with some of those different conveyor components, one thing I'm going to go ahead and add, I'll scroll through till I find it, I'm going to add this conveyor frame. What that will do is it will push our connector out by basically one row of small grid blocks. And this is going to be important later when I go to put some of the lifting thrusters on here because of the type of thruster that we're going to use. So we're going to use this conveyor frame as well as the connector as well. So first thing, CONV to find the frame, which is right there. Add that. Remove the V. There's a connector. Verify that it is small grid. And go ahead and add that as well. So back to our access point. Grab what we can. Queue up what we can. What do I have in here? Okay, I got plenty of base components. Let's go ahead and just begin. Oh, that's right. That needs interior plates, not steel plates. So I guess I do have to wait. Check the production. Yeah, it's all done anyway. I should have known that wouldn't take very long. Impatience. Alright, so let's get this on here, make sure hopefully it's lined up correctly. It is easy to misalign things in this game. And that. And start welding things up. So there's our connector. And there is our conveyor frame. So I'll just verify everything's where it's supposed to be. Yep, everything is all lined up. So there is the core of our ship. Okay, we have our cockpit, our cargo container, and our connector. So once again, like we did before, I'm going to pop into the cockpit, bring up that K menu, and better label these. So the airship rear connector. And airship cargo container. Doesn't matter that it's medium or not. It just needs to, it's just for our cargo. And then I specified this is the rear connector because, as I think I mentioned, maybe I did mention it, down here on the bottom here, we're actually going to put a second connector so we can have one that faces down and we can just drop it and land on a vertically placed connector, or we have the option in the back to connect to a horizontal cargo connector. So that's why we're going to end up with ultimately having 2 of these. Alright, what's next in our little build? Well, next in our little build is we need some juice, and that means batteries. So go over here, I'm going to redeposit those for now. And I'm going to go ahead, go to G, go to batteries, queue a couple in the build planner, grab what we can, begin production of what we can't. Okay, so batteries. For small grid, there's 2 basic types of batteries. available. First off, there's the large battery. As you might expect, it has the most capacity of the two varieties and has the most raw power output. Then we have the small battery. Okay, not as much capacity, not as much power output in terms of kilowatts. For a vehicle like this, a good way to go is to go with the larger of the two batteries. One thing about atmospheric thrusters is they require a lot of power. And so the large size battery is a better bargain in terms of the amount of power output and the amount of storage capacity you get for the amount of materials that you use. To have the equivalent storage capacity and power output in small batteries would require a lot more components and a lot more space. So we're going to go with the large battery for our build. Now, to make it look a little more interesting, this battery is from the Warfare DLC. It's functionally equivalent to the regular battery, except it just looks a little neater. So I'm going to go ahead and use that for our build here. Rotate it so the triangle is facing, I don't know, the normal way, if that's the way you want to say it. And then I'm going to get battery number 2 up. Once again, I got to replace my welder on this toolbar. Something I should probably do off camera. And then a quick right click to install all the components I have on me. Do the same thing over here. Another quick left click, not right click, it is left to install those components. And then back over here, still working on those power cells. However, I can finish one of my batteries, so go ahead and get this welded up. Okay, there is one done. And all components successfully withdrawn. Alright, so there's the second one done. So now we have both batteries on our ship, and we now have some power. Batteries start out with a little bit of power available to them. If we look down here, these indicator lights give you a feel for how much charge is currently in the battery. With one light illuminated, that tells you have somewhere around 25% of the battery's maximum capacity in the battery. So we have a little bit, but not a ton. So once again, with those two components done, we're going to hop back in the cockpit, go back to that K menu, and we're going to go ahead and label those batteries as well. So label them both as airship batteries. We can clear the Warfare out if we want to. I won't do it, I'll just leave it in there. So Airship Warfare Battery 1, Airship Warfare Battery 2. Again, if you don't have that particular DLC, that's okay. The regular large size batteries for the small grid will get the job done. It does the exact same thing. So if we take a look at each individual battery, so what do we have? So for each one, both maximum input and output are 4 megawatts. Maximum stored power is 1 megawatt hour. The current input is none, so we're not charging the battery at all. Current output is 1.51 kilowatts, which isn't a whole lot compared to the raw storage. Stored power, almost 300 kilowatt hours, and notice, fully depleted in 8 days. Okay, and that is 8 actual days. Okay, 24 times 8, whatever that happens to be, I don't know it off the top of my head. So that's the capacity and where we're at with our batteries here on our little ship. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and create a group. We're going to group these two batteries together. So I have Warfare Battery 1 selected. I'm going to control and click on Warfare Battery 2 and create a block group. So the block group name is going to be Airship Batteries. There we go, learn to spell. And save it. So now I have a group that has both of those attached together. That's going to come in handy later. Okay, but we're just going to go ahead and get that set up now since we're playing around in that menu. Alright, we have power. What's next? Well, a couple different things we're going to need in order to make this little ship fly. One, we need thrusters, and the second thing we need is a gyroscope. A gyroscope is a method of control that allows you to maneuver the ship, bank it and turn it and pitch it using your mouse. Without that, you're kind of stuck in some ways. So that's a valuable thing that we need to get on our ship. And so that's the next thing we're going to put on there. In addition to that, we're also going to put an ore detector on our little ship. Because one thing we want to be able to do is mine ore with this thing. and it's hard to mine what you can't find. So the ore detector will help us find those materials as well. So if we go over here and we check our survival pod, quite conveniently, we pop up here, our survival pod has an ore detector on it. So what we can do is we can just go ahead, grind that off, head back to our little ship, pop on up here. I'm going to put it on the top here. I'm going to mount it, center it on the cargo container. That is not, an ore detector is currently not in our toolbar. So we'll go ahead and find it, drop it on here. Place and weld. Okay, now with that component, we'll pop back in the cockpit, hit the K key, go to our ore detector. Once again, we want to specify what ship it belongs to or what vehicle it is on. Then the other thing we want to do is we want to come over here and we want to go ahead and turn it off, because that ore detector will use power, and so we just want to shut it down for the time being because we're really not using it. We're just sitting here on our little building pad. So there's the ore detector, and the other thing we need is our gyroscope. So go in here, go to gyroscope. I'm going to go ahead, verify I've got the small grid because there are both small and large grid versions of the gyroscope. Verify I've got the small grid version, put it in the build planner, and bring it down here. So I'm all ready with it in my toolbar. Come down here, grab what I can, queue up what I can. How much is left? Probably, yeah, we can just go ahead and wait for it here. Okay, there we go. So all the stuff is produced. So we'll pop back up here on top of our little ship, and we're going to place the gyroscope right behind the ore detector. Now, by and large, it doesn't really matter where or what orientation, where you place the gyroscope or orientation you use for it. I like to use this as the front, and this is the back. So the one that has just that single little eye, I usually like to have that facing forward, lay it down, and weld it up. And as we did before, pop into our cockpit, bring up that K menu, gyroscope, and queue it up, airship gyroscope. Alright, so now you have gyroscope, ore detector. Now we need some thrusters. So for this particular ship, since this is designed for planetary flight only, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to grab the atmospheric type of thrusters. There are several different types of thrusters for Space Engineers. We'll get to all of them at some point in time, but we're going to start with the atmospheric thrusters, as those are the ones that we rely on when we're in atmosphere. Now these come in several varieties, varying in their appearance and the amount of thrust that they will generate for you. So this is the large atmospheric thruster. This is what I would describe as the standard atmospheric thruster. It produces the most thrust of all the different thrusters available to us. And this is what I'll just call a standard atmospheric thruster. This is identical to what we ground off of our survival pod. It's third in line in terms of the amount of thrust produced. Then we have some flat atmospheric thrusters. This is the large version of it. The flat atmospheric thruster produces the second most thrust behind the large one. And in terms of where the thrust is coming out, it's easy to tell on the standard ones, maybe not quite so obvious on these. So these you can tell if you notice that red box that's surrounding the thruster. That empty area below the thruster, as I currently have it oriented, that's the direction of the thrust. It is important to recognize the direction of the thrust because any blocks you put behind that thrust can get damaged, or actually not can get damaged, they will get damaged by the thruster. So you have to be sure to give your block some clearance from your thrusters, otherwise you're going to be damaging your ship as you're flying around. So there is this one, the large flat atmospheric thruster. There is another version of it if you want a slightly different aesthetic. And then there are also small versions of both of those. The small versions of these have the lowest thrust output of any of the thrusters. And then finally, again, depending if you have the appropriate DLC, there's also what is known as the sci-fi or science fiction atmospheric thrusters as well. For starters, what we're going to use is we're going to begin by using these large flat atmospheric thrusters. So I'm going to go ahead and pick those up out of our build queue and queue up a couple of them. Okay, grab what we can, queue up what we don't, queue up what we can't. Okay, and these flat atmospheric thrusters, we're going to go ahead and place them right underneath our ship here. Oh, we didn't have any steel plates to grab. That would explain why I can't. That would explain why I can't place them. So I guess we have to wait. There we go. All components successfully withdrawn. So now I've got everything I need. Okay, so I'm gonna crouch down here to make it a little easier to get to it, and I'm gonna place those right along the center line of our ship. And there we go. Okay, so notice how these line up. Why I wanted to put this extra conveyor frame in there, because that pushes the end of my connector out just past our thruster, which is what I want for, I don't know if it necessarily makes it any easier for connecting, but it does offer me a little bit of clearance. And also, ultimately, I'm going to put a reverse camera on the back of that thruster as well. Okay, so now that they're on there, we'll go ahead and get them welded up. Okay, so there we have our first two thrusters on there. Now, once again, I'm going to pop in that cockpit, hit that K button, and down here you can see we have the large, flat, atmospheric thruster. As before, we're going to go ahead and rename these. I'm going to rename them so we have airship, and then I'm also going to provide a description of what it does. This is our lifting thruster, and it's lifting thruster number 1. I'm going to do the same thing here. Airship lifting thruster number 2. And the other thing I'm going to do, these default to on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and select both of them, kind of like I did with the batteries. So I've got them both selected, and just toggle those blocks off. That way, I'm not draining my battery's power with engines just sitting there idling. Now, for as nice as these two thrusters are, two of them are not going to get the job done when this thing is fully loaded, so we need some extra boost. So what we're going to do in addition to these two large thrusters that are on the bottom is we're going to go ahead and add 4 of these regular size atmospheric thrusters. Okay, so we're going to add 4 of those standard thrusters to our build as well. Grab what I can, queue up what I can. This time we're just going to go ahead and let it run. So this might take a little bit of time, unfortunately, to do. How are we looking for power? We've got power and we've got hydrogen, so we really don't have anything that we need to replenish. So let's see, what do we got back over here? What is there anything else? We do a little bit more grinding down of our initial survival pod here. And start to take these out. There's nothing over here that these are supporting, so we're safe taking them out at this point. There we go. There's a little bit more off of our survival pod. I'll go over here and see how things are going. Sounds like it's still running along. Still crunching along. I heard a unknown signal. While we're waiting on that, let's go check our unknown signal and see what we got. That'll give us something to do. So I'm going to come in here and look up my O2H2 generator because that has a hydrogen bottle in it. And no, we definitely don't want to go for any long flights without first grabbing a hydrogen bottle. So getting back up in the air again, It also kind of illustrates, if we look around, it illustrates very well why we really can't build a wheeled rover for this particular area. There is a lot of rugged, mountainous type terrain in here that really we're only going to be able to get through utilizing an air vehicle. So we'll just kind of stop here and wait for that thing to get to the ground. It certainly is going to land us into some interesting terrain here. Alright, there we go. And it's going to roll until it decides to stop. Hopefully it will get caught. I'd try and stop it myself, but I really don't want to get ran over. Alright, there we go. So it has stopped, not in the most convenient position, but we can handle it. So, what do we got? Anything interesting? Apparently not. Alright, so now we can start grinding stuff off. Notice this has an ore detector on it as well. Take off the little feet. There we go. As I said, that was a good example there of how annoying it can be to try and get some of these things off of there. Alright, so now just kind of start grinding stuff off. There we go. Got it from this angle. Looks like we got some smaller blocks on that side. Detector. I don't want to grind down the cargo container just yet. Not a whole lot in it. A little bit though. Let's see if we can somehow catch these last two blocks. There we go. Alright, so there's a little bit of extra loot for us. Something to kill a little bit of time while we waited for those components to produce. I almost came in for a landing that was a little rougher than I would have wanted to have seen. Okay, so bring up the O2 H2 generator, drop our hydrogen bottle back in there. Now we'll just go around to our cargo container. Drop all the stuff in there. And we should be ready for our components. Alright, so now we have our remaining thrusters, so we can go ahead now and put those on. Okay, so we need the standard thruster here. There we go. And there's two there, and we'll put two more there. So there are maybe the rest of our lifting thrusters. Okay, everything's welded up. Bring up our K menu, and once again, here we have our atmospheric thrusters. Again, airship lifting thruster will describe what it does, and this is actually thruster number 3. And I'm going to go ahead and to simplify life a little bit, I'm going to copy and paste instead of typing all the time. So paste in, this will be thruster number 4. Thruster number 5, and finally, thruster number 6. Okay, and like the previous two thrusters we put on, these are on by default. So I'm going to click on the thruster 3, go down to thruster 6, hold the shift key, and click, and that will select everything between the 2 points on there. So between thrusters 3 and 6, we got everything, and shut things down. Okay, so there is our initial ship. Now, what's left? Well, what is left is we are going to need some thrusters for all the other directions, basically. Because the way Space Engineers works with their air vehicles is instead of banking like you would an airplane in atmosphere, basically Space Engineers relies on thrusters for pretty much everything, all the turning, all the maneuvering, and so forth. So what we need is thrusters in basically every direction. So we have our lifting thrusters to push us up. We need a set of thrusters to push us forward, a set of thrusters to cause braking and push us backwards. We want some thrusters to laterally move us from side to side, right and left. That's very helpful when you're trying to dock things up. The one direction we won't worry about is we won't worry about having downward thrusters, because since we're in a planet, we're going to let gravity get that job done for us. Okay? So let's go ahead and get those remaining thrusters put onto our ship. So first thing I'm going to need go ahead and queue up 6 thrusters for... I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to queue up 6 thrusters for forward thrust purposes. So what we're gonna rig up is we're gonna rig up a thruster system where we have 6 that push us forward, 6 that make us go backwards, and then we'll have 3 that will push us from side to side. And once again, we don't really need thrusters to push us down because we'll let gravity do that job for us. So for our forward thrusters, I'm going to go ahead and put those down here. These thrusters we're going to use these standard sized ones here. There are 3 there. And we'll come over here and put 3 on this side. So there is the setup for our thrusters. Now if we want to, we can come in here, as we've been doing, and go here. Okay, so now if I copy and paste, I got the airship. So now I can call this airship forward thruster number 1. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this so I don't have as much typing to do. So forward thruster 2. Four, 5, and lastly, number 6. Okay, so there's all of our forward thrusters, and as before, we're going to go ahead and turn those blocks off. We can do all that even though those thrusters aren't quite finished yet. Now we'll go ahead and add components to add the components that we have. Okay, there we go. Now back. It's still working, so come back over here. Yep, we can weld that one up. Weld this one up. About this one. Yep, all the components are there. Now, you don't have to do what I do and wait. You can start welding the component before all the... You can go ahead and start welding the engine before all the components to finish it are actually there. It's just when you don't have all the pieces, it gives you that annoying buzz. Okay, Okay, how are we doing for production? We just have a few more motors left in the construction components. We'll go ahead and just wait this out. And there we go. Okay, so there are the forward thrusters. Now we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing. Queue up 6 more. Grab what we can, queue up what we can't. That work. Now our reverse thrusters, go ahead and put them on the side of the batteries. Just rotate that so it's facing backwards. There we go. One thing I do like to do on these is I like to have as many braking thrusters as I do forward thrusters. There's airship forward thruster. Alright, so here are... Okay, so this is actually reverse. Thruster 1. First thruster 2. 3. 4. 5, and there is number 6. Alright, so there's all of those ready to go. And we'll just kind of start coming over here now and start putting stuff in. Actually, one thing I think I forgot to do. I forgot to turn them off. Let's go ahead and shut all those, close and turn those blocks off so they're not draining our battery, just sitting there idling. One set of reverse thrusters. I think one thing I just thought of that will make things a little more convenient for us. While we're waiting for the assembler to do its thing, notice, here's our forward thrusters, here's our gyroscope, here's another set of thrusters, here's another set of thrusters. One of the this will get kind of annoying eventually, so a better way to set this up: airship, thruster, forward. Because of the alphabetical nature of our list here, setting it up this way will cluster things a lot better. So I'm going to slip in here and make this correction while we're waiting, since we're waiting for the thing to go anyway. This might be something I do off camera for the rest of them, but what the advantage this is going to give us is this will cluster all of the thrusters together. Okay, since this was lifting, if I learned to spell, there we go. Okay, get that in there once again. Okay, now what this is going to do, if I close this and reopen it, if we go down here now, notice airship thruster, notice now all of these thrusters are collected together. Okay, and that will be useful, that will ultimately be useful, very useful to us. So here are reverse thrusters. So I'll just go ahead and do the same thing here. Now, if you label them this way in the first place, you won't have to worry about it. Alright, there we go. So, back to our access point. All our components should be easily done by now. Alright, there we go. So, now we have forward thrust, we have reverse thrust, we have up thrust. And again, gravity is going to handle the downward duties for us. So we need 6 more thrusters. Three of which we'll use to shift left, and 3 of which we'll use to shift right. Grab what we can, queue up what we can. Alright. So back up here on top, we're going to go ahead and place these on top. So we'll start with these over here. There's 3 of them. So now this particular thruster is going to push everything left. Let's come back in here. Or push everything right, sorry about that. Okay, so this is airship thruster number 1. Right. It's on the left side of the ship, but it pushes it right. Okay, so there's that. Now conveniently we pop out right on top of the cockpit again. Now we queue up the left-hand thrusters. So this is airship thruster 1. This is pushing it left. Okay, so there's all our left-hand thrusters. And once again, I'm going to select them all using shift-click and turn all the blocks off because we don't need it idling while we wait. Okay, so let's see, how did that do us? Ooh, still a lot of stuff queued up to make. Let's go restore the hydrogen anyway. Get these welded up. There we go. Okay, back down to grab some more stuff. Where are we at here? Production. Yeah, slow producing components. Unfortunately, there's really nothing I can do about that. Let's come back here to our pod here and see if there's anything we can finish grinding off here. Well, next thing we can do while we're waiting hit the lights. We won't kill the battery just yet. Apparently the H2O2 generator was connected to the landing gear that was supporting the ship. That's okay. Because, as I mentioned, we're not going to utilize this ship again. Except, as I said, it can be difficult, depending on your angles, to target certain parts of the ship. So, I'll just come back over here now. Actually, I already had stuff in there, so I'm not going to do any depositing right now. All components were withdrawn. All right. All right. We now have a functional flying ship. Okay, we have thrust in 5 out of the 6 directions that we need. We have a way to connect it to the base. We have a gyroscope and an ore detector on it. So we now have officially a fully functioning ship. As I said, it ain't pretty, but she will fly. The final things left to connect to it, which we will do in the next episode, we have our drills that we want to attach. And we have and we also are going to add a connector to the bottom down here. So those are a couple different things that we want to take care of as well to officially finish up our ship and our design. So in the next episode, we will add those extra components that we're looking at. We'll also go ahead and definitely take it for a test flight just to see how it fares. Okay, and one, I guess, final thing also that we're going to add to it is we will go ahead and add some landing gear as well, so we can touch down on ground that doesn't have a connector available to us. Okay, so that is it for this particular episode. I hope it's been enjoyable. I know it's been a little longer than my usual ones, but hopefully it's been worth it seeing our construction completed here. So have a great day, and I will catch you in the next one.